Have you ever wondered what makes an idea last for thousands of years? Today, we're diving into the teachings of a figure whose words literally changed the world, Jesus of Nazareth. For over 2 millennia, his message has inspired movements, shaped entire legal systems, and guided billions of people. So the big question is, what did he actually say?
And we're not just talking about some dusty ancient history here. Think about it. These teachings have woven their way through art, philosophy, and our laws, really shaping what we call Western civilization. So what were these world-changing ideas? Let's get into it.
All right, to really get a handle on his impact, here's the path we're going to take. First up, we'll look at why his voice still resonates so powerfully today. Then, we'll break down his methods, the incredible sermons and those unforgettable stories. After that, we'll zoom in on his central message, this idea of the kingdom of God. We'll also see how his own life was basically the ultimate example of everything he taught. And finally, we'll ask the big question, why has this legacy lasted? Okay, let's jump right into that first big question. Seriously, after 2,000 years, why are we still talking about this guy? What is it about these specific ideas that gives them such incredible staying power?
Well, a huge part of the answer is that these weren't just lectures, His words were meant to do something, to inspire people, to challenge them, and ultimately to guide them. They're almost like a moral compass that people still use today. So let's start unpacking the core of that message and see what makes it so potent.
So how did he get these powerful ideas across? Well, he basically used two brilliant methods. On one hand, you have these direct, really impactful sermons. And on the other, he told these simple but profound stories called parables. And that combination, it meant that even the most complex spiritual ideas were suddenly accessible to everyone, whether you were a scholar or a fisherman.
Just take this famous line from his Sermon on the Mount, "Blessed are the peacemakers." Think about that for a second. It's not a command like, you must make peace. It's a blessing. It's poetic, it's easy to remember, and it completely flips the script on what society valued as power. Instead of celebrating the conquerors, it lifts up the people who create peace.
And when you look at his sermons as a whole, you start to see these themes pop up again and again. It's this really consistent moral framework built around love, compassion, and forgiveness, especially when it's hard. And it's all wrapped up in this deep sense of humility, putting others first.
Okay, so besides those direct sermons, Jesus had another brilliant tool in his toolbox, the parable. And the absolute genius of the parable was its simplicity. He would take a totally normal everyday situation, like a woman baking bread or a farmer working in a field, and he'd use it as this incredible metaphor for a deep spiritual truth.
A classic example is the parable of the sower. The story itself is super simple, right? A farmer is just scattering some seeds, but the meaning behind it is so profound. The different kinds of soil he talks about, the hard path, the rocky ground, the thorny patch, and the good soil, they're all metaphors for the different ways we humans receive a message. It's really a story about being open, and it forces you to ask yourself, okay, which type of soil am I?
All right, so we've seen how he taught, but what was it all about? What was the main subject? Well, pretty much all of his sermons and all of his parables point toward this one single unifying idea, the kingdom of God.
And this is so important to get. For Jesus, the kingdom of God wasn't just some far-off thing that happens after you die. It was this dual concept. It was a present reality, a totally new way of living your life right now, and it was also a future hope for the ultimate redemption of the world.
And this metaphor he used is just brilliant. He compared the kingdom to a tiny mustard seed, literally one of the smallest seeds you can find. It starts off almost invisible, totally unnoticed, but it grows into this huge, life-giving tree. It's this incredible message of hope and potential, right? It suggests that massive, world-changing things can come from the smallest, most humble beginnings.
Now this next point is absolutely crucial. For Jesus, these weren't just abstract ideas or nice theories. His teachings meant nothing without action. He actually lived his message, and that personal integrity, that walking the walk, is maybe the single biggest reason his influence has lasted.
Just look at this stunning contrast. The conventional wisdom of the day was an eye for an eye, a principle of balanced revenge. But Jesus comes along and proposes something totally different, something really radical. Love your enemies. He completely replaces that endless cycle of retaliation with this idea of proactive, unconditional love. That is a fundamental rethinking of justice and how we relate to each other.
And here's another one of his core teachings about personal integrity. Do not judge. Now, this isn't just about not being a hypocrite. It's a much deeper call for self-awareness. The whole idea is to focus on your own stuff first, which in turn helps create a community built on grace instead of constant judgment.
So you start to see how it all connects, right? The main themes of his sermons, humility, compassion, forgiveness, these were also the defining traits of his own character. He didn't just talk about humbling yourself, he went and spent his time with the outcasts of society. He didn't just talk about forgiveness, he practiced it even when it was incredibly difficult. In a way, his entire life was the ultimate sermon.
All right, so let's bring this all home and look at the legacy. Why have these ideas, this whole integrated system of teaching and then living it out, why has it endured for so long and influenced so many people?
I think ultimately, the staying power of these teachings is in their depth. They offer so much more than just a simple moral code. They really provide a whole worldview, a framework for understanding our relationship with God, our relationships with each other, and the path toward what he called salvation.
And all of this brings us to a final and much more personal question. After exploring all these ideas, the challenge kind of turns back to us. How do we respond to a call to love our enemies and forgive the people who wrong us? I mean, that's not an easy question to answer. And maybe that very challenge is the reason these teachings still echo so powerfully through time.